The 2025 global CEA census is now complete, and the final report offers deep analysis on data collected from more than 450 CEA growers and professionals around the globe. CEAg World co-produces the census with Agritecture, and for this three-part CEAg Talk series, I sat down with Agritecture CEO Henry Gordon Smith, lead agronomist David Caesar, and South American representative Victoria Mora. We've chosen three topics that stood out to us among the findings, and our discussion will shine a light on what that data tells us. Here, in part 3, we discuss the ROI of AI. All three parts of this series will be available at ceagworld.com/ceag-talks. Go to ceagworld.com/census to download the entire 2025 Global CEA Census Report. The last topic we're going to tackle is the ROI on AI. So artificial intelligence is often presented as a major opportunity for CEA, but the census suggests that adoption is still cautious. So what did the data reveal about how growers are actually approaching AI today?
So the census data has shown us that AI is moving past a hype phase, let's say. Between the current users and those that are planning to adopt, we were looking at 70 to 80% of the CEA industry integrating AI soon. And so we separated the question in two options, right? Growers that are already integrating AI are those that are not integrating but have a true intention to invest. And then we also ask them, how much are you thinking about investing in the next 12 months? If you're curious, you can check that out. And currently, it's heavily applied to climate control and irrigation. About 60% of AI users are applying, according to our responses, are applying it to these areas to optimize resource efficiency. However, we also spot a paradox regarding the return on investment, as a lot of users reported that they were not sure about the return on investment of AI. And if we want to unpack a little bit on what that means, is that the ROI of AI can feel uncertain because many of these mid-tech and high-tech farms are already using advanced sensors and automated climate algorithms, but also on what do we mean by AI? I think AI right now is such a broad term that is used to really talk about different systems and different integrations, and we need to establish a definition. We did not put a strict one on the census because people understand it differently, but we wanted to mainly pass this idea of being able to integrate systems, LLMs, into technology that can improve how you measure your metrics in your operations in your farm. And one point is that AI often provides incremental improvements, right? So let's say a 3% to a 5% yield bump or a 5% to a 10% energy reduction rather than a complete transformation. And when you also account for the cost of the software, but also the data integration is a key that I want to mention a little bit more, but and also the training and the operators and how you have to account for all of these investments with these incremental improvements in performance is really hard to say sometimes how much overall the return is for that. And there's also another disconnect, a second major barrier to adopt AI in the census when asked to farm operators, the main barriers for AI adoption. One of them was the increase in prices. And so we found two gaps here. The first, the main barrier was reported to be the increase in prices. However, most technology suppliers said that their prices only increased by around 0 to 25%, if any. Some reported no increase. Yet, the growers are perceiving this cost of implementation as a major barrier. And if you ask why, maybe it's because the real cost isn't necessarily just the software itself, but because of the integration and all the investment that you need to do to train people to use, but also to integrate this technology with your other systems. And the second major gap was the technical knowledge required to use it properly and the lack of this technical knowledge. And so the real value of AI really comes when human decision making is not a bottleneck. And so predictive climate control, early disease detection via computer vision, and labor reduction can be some of those examples. The second bottleneck that we found is that the second major barrier to adopting was the lack of technical skills to operate the systems. And 78% growers, we had a question that asked, how do you like to interact with AI? And 78% of the growers said that they prefer to interact directly with AI. So they want to ask questions and they want to adjust settings and balance yields versus risk. However, we also saw when asking suppliers that 32% of tech suppliers, only 32% offer this direct interaction, and they usually prefer the AI to run on the back end. And there's little technical support a lot of times. And so bridging this gap, giving growers more transparency and providing them the tools so that they can understand how this technology works and how to operate is crucial also to decrease this barrier of integration that we are also talking about. And as they are having, multiple conversations with their different suppliers and how they're going to operate all of this, but also how to train their staff and how to provide assistance in general.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about this year, which is our fifth year, right, of the census, right? So is that we can also look back at some of the previous years, and there's some analysis from that we can take. But we know last year we had a focus on equipment and technology, right? And we were able to break down the stages which customers were at, CA operators were at, as far as thinking about which equipment was important to them. Climate control, again, was a very important part for them. We're seeing climate control sort of going throughout this as something that's important to them. And also the role of AI in that we see a bit more this year, as well as that being a priority. I think what's interesting about this AI data as well is that, it reminds us of some of the differences that suppliers need to be aware of, especially related to different types of farms in different regions. Again, we're talking about context, right? So that applies not just those planning the farms, but also the sellers of the equipment and the installers. And this integration question has come up again, that there's a mismatch between what the suppliers are doing as far as the customization needs of these growers and the integration challenges. I think it reminds me, like years ago, I mean, this was a problem, right? When these early software tools were coming up for CEA, when CEA was getting popular, the farmers were experiencing just what they do experience in all of ag tech, right? Which is that they feel like they're teaching the equipment companies more than they're getting from the equipment companies, which as a farmer with small margins, working hard, difficult conditions is literally the most annoying thing for them. And so that is why we see such a big gap as well, is because sort of thinking about those farmer needs first and foremost, and the differences between low, mid-tech greenhouses in different parts of the world is really going to be what's necessary to get this AI revolution in CEA to cross any bridge. I suspect, and I think the data shows that the more high-tech approaches our farm types are going to adopt first because of their higher capex, because they already have much more data coming in. That big data is a big benefit to these software companies. They have something they can analyze that's not on pieces of paper, and that should hopefully make the integration process easier, although not eliminate it, we see. But that's where we'll see adoption arrive first and start to be more meaningful first, where those incremental improvements that we see in AI will make some kind of a difference. I think the much bigger question, and it potentially challenge, but also opportunity, is what we talked about a little bit already, is that most greenhouses, most CA globally is low and mid tech by far. So, what does that look like for solving our enormous challenges of less water, more difficult climate conditions, more difficult labor conditions, more difficult energy conditions? Where can AI step in those places in a way that's adapted to their needs to solve, our collective mission here?
I think,
Great point.
yeah, I think with the low tech growers, what we'll see is a very kind of like trickling effect of those technology spreads. Because another thing the census looked at this year and that asked operators is who they trust when considering new technologies. And as it's always been, most farmers really trust other farmers the most, right? And so when they hear from their friends and their buddies that, okay, this technology is really working in my farm, that's when they're most likely to adopt it.
Anything else you guys want to get in there for any of these topics?
I mean, look, if you're a supplier, if you're a consultant, if you're a grower, if you're a student, if you're a researcher, if you're developing software for the sector, there are insights in here that you can benefit from. And these are just a small snapshot of those. So just dig into it with your own questions, with your own lens, understand its limitations like we share transparently, but dig into it. And, this is what we can all benefit from together. That's why we do it.
And if you are somebody reading this and if you like it, if you also understand the limitations, also understanding the limitations, here's one way that you can help. When you find studies like these being produced in the future, be active in participating, be active in contributing to the data, because the better the data that we have, the better the results and the insights we can provide for you. And so it's not just engaging to consume, but engage also to give, because at the end of the day, you are the one benefiting from those type of studies in general.